In the Cradle by Harry Chapin on your home for Pure Rock Radio, WONC, FM 89. I'm Steve Pulaski. We are into the second hour of Sleepless with Steve, the show that brings you great film talk punctuated with a little bit of rock music. But now it's time for the former part of our program. Joining me now, the inimitable one half of the Movie Book Club and my close friend, Dominic Guanzon. How are you, Dom?
Former, now current. I'm back on.
Very nice to see you, my friend. How's everything going?
Good. I'm quite excited, and it's the second hour here, so it's time for maybe some industry talk.
Indeed, yeah. I'm going to try and keep that formula going. New release reviews in the first hour, and then industry talk in a second. By the way, I forgot one small note during the first hour. Next week, this coming weekend, I will be seeing The Circle and Slight. Those are the two new reviews that I will have for you a week from tonight. But anyway, now we're talking about industry talk, and it's going to get pessimistic. It's going to get very pessimistic. I'm just going to let you know right now. I dabbled into this. I think I did more than dabble. I expounded upon it last week about how I wasn't anticipating a great box office weekend this weekend. And I said these next 2 weeks would be telling for the box office because we're in an awkward intermediate period. I've been saying we just got bombarded by blockbusters last month. We had Logan, Kong Skull Island, Beauty and the Beast, Ghost in the Shell, Power Rangers. We had a ton out last month. And now we're in the middle. Last week became the Fate of the Furious. That came out. And now May 5th, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So that leaves 2 weeks in between of movies that are coming out. Born in China, Unforgettable, The Promise, Phoenix Forgotten, and Free Fire were all released this week. And next week you have How to Be a Latin Lover, Slight, and The Circle.
And a lot of movies.
Indeed, a lot of movies.
But the numbers not very good on them.
The numbers are poor. I'm just going to do a quick rundown right here. Born in China, $4.7 million this weekend. Unforgettable, $4.7 million on a $12 million budget.
It's the whole U.S. box office.
This is just this weekend. This is all U.S. box office. Ready for this kicker? The Promise, $90 million budget, made $4 million this weekend.
Ooh.
Phoenix Forgotten, $1.8 million. On a $2.8 million budget. Couldn't even recoup its budget, which is microscopic in Hollywood. Free Fire, $994,000 this weekend. These are awful numbers. There's no way to sugarcoat it. These are awful numbers for movies that were probably predicted. I think even predicted not to do much better. Free Fire is appalling. Free Fire wasn't even predicted to do that worst case scenario. That's a disaster. The Promise that's on the Armenian genocide. That's a disaster too. Go ahead.
The question. So this is the opening weekend for most of these movies, right? Opening week or weekend?
Opening weekend for all the movies that I just listed.
What's the decay rate on gains? I don't know if you have a formula for this, but what's the decay rate on gains after the first week?
They're usually down. It always depends on the type of movie. Like Fate of the Furious is very front-loaded. It made $90 million last weekend, made $99 million last weekend, made $38 this weekend. That's a 61% drop. Usually it goes down like box offices. It depends. Like usually blockbusters, not box office. Excuse me. Blockbusters will usually go down about 50% normally. That's what they anticipate, between 45 and 55%, because you got to think a lot of people that are fans of Marvel movies or DC movies or Fate of the Furious, whatever, they're going to rush out opening weekend.
Right.
Where it's more dependent on movies like going in style, movies that appeal to an older demographic that are going to what they say hold better because of the fact that it's a demographic that doesn't race out to see a movie.
Okay.
So that's the thing. Now, all these movies are only, with the exception of The Promise, which opened in 2,200 theaters, and Unforgettable, which opened in 2,400, they're only a little above 1,000 theaters, which is not a lot. That's not a lot of shit. That's not a lot of theaters. That's not a lot of houses that are carrying these films. They're going to drop, not only because of the fact that they're just going to be in their second week and they're coming off of very meager returns, but they are also just small movies that are going to lose theaters to begin with, especially now when you have 3 new releases coming out this week,
and we call these flops.
These are flops.
If they don't make their budget, they'll recoup their budget. It's called a flop.
Yes, indeed. Yes, and now when you look at something like The Promise, which is about $100 million movie making $4 million, that's not a flop. That's a disaster.
That's a bomb.
That's a bomb. And I think I could be wrong on this, but I think the studio I think the studio for the film, which is Open Road, they made. It's funny, Open Road's got a horrible track record this year. They made Spark, A Space Tale, the animated movie that did horribly this past weekend. Collide, which was another disaster. Before I Fall, which didn't make money. So they're on the hook for a lot of bombs this year.
That's like Dead End Pictures now.
It is. That's Open Road. There's Dead End Pictures. There you go. That's why you're on the show. The Promise, I think that they never intended to make their money back, but still, it was more of like it's a movie about the Armenian genocide, heavy topic, doesn't get a lot of coverage in America. Is a forgotten Holocaust to begin with. So they made that movie basically, out of awareness and like good faith, but still good faith doesn't pay the bills.
That's a shame because the Armenian genocide is something, historically speaking, is something that is unknown, relatively unknown to most Americans. And it's like that's a story that deserves to be told. I don't know. What was your review of it again?
I didn't see it.
You didn't see it?
I didn't see it.
Sure.
It was just a crowded weekend.
Even though, whether or not it's good or bad, sure, it's just a shame that something about such a serious, heavy topic does not do so well. Now, did it deserve to do well? I don't know. Again, we haven't seen it.
It got mixed reviews.
Sure.
It got mixed reviews, but it's got Christian Bale and it's got Oscar Isaac in it. It's got names. It's got names.
Now, what are all these failures across? Wasn't there a movie that made less than $1 million?
No, Free Fire.
Oh boy,
Free Fire.
900,000.
Yes.
Yikes. What was the budget on that?
They did not release the budget.
They don't want to.
Well, I would guess about $10 million. I would guess about $10 million for that kind of movie. Maybe 5 even. I mean, I would say most of that movie's going to paying actors and paying Brie Larson specifically.
Now, what does this mean for the industry overall? Is this does this just happen every now and then? You just get a slate of bad returns, or does this say something about the industry?
I say when you're looking at five plus. I would say 5. It's hard to say flops. Unforgettable might break even, or it might crawl to like 10 million. It may be on a very optimistic light. Born in China is hard to call a flop because it's performing about on average for Disney nature movies. Sure. It's gonna play like that too. They're usually not on the hook for too much. I would say out of these, you got 3. You got one bomb. You got 2 bombs. You got Free Fire and The Promise are bombs. You got Phoenix Forgotten, which is going to really underperform, and you got Born in China and Unforgettable, which will likely break even. Now, the issue with this though is that you're going to wind up seeing in future years, and we've been going to this trend, I think, in the last year. You're going to wind up seeing less of these movies come to theaters. You're going to wind up seeing more of these movies come to video on demand, and you're going to have the multiplex, and it already is going this way. The multiplex is going to be a place where movies like Fate of the Furious, Beauty and the Beast, and The Boss Baby go.
Why take that risk when you can just go to Netflix and get a much better returns, much better press?
I keep saying this. Why lament things like the lack of female characters in movies, strong female characters, when instead of going to see Underworld 5, you can watch Supergirl or Winona Earp right from the comfort of your home? Why lament the lack of quality in DC films when you can watch Supergirl, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Daredevil, The Flash, one of the many great superhero programs that's recurring on Netflix or television.
With strong female leads.
Yeah, exactly, in addition. And why lament the lack of originality in horror movies nowadays when you can watch something like American Horror Story? What's that other one? Black Widow or whatever? Black Widow, something like that?
Yeah.
Why or Black Mirror, I think it's called. Why, you can tell I'm film, not TV. But why lament these kind of features at the theater when you can watch something of quality in your home? The positioning of the theater is getting to the point where it's saying go see films like Logan, go see films like Beauty and the Beast, maybe go see films like Get Out. You're gonna have these. I wouldn't even call them sleeper hits. Get Out was a success. You're gonna have movies like Get Out, which are like almost unexpected successes, I guess you would say. You're gonna have movies like that. You're gonna be getting less movies like The Promise and less movies like Phoenix Forgotten. And The Promise, I'd argue too, its failure is attributable to another dead project. And you know what that project is? It's called The Passion Project. Last year you had Warren Beatty's first movie in 15 years, Rules Don't Apply. Bombed incredibly. Didn't deserve to, but it bombed. And you also had, which I think is even the bigger story, Martin Scorsese's movie Silence. A Scorsese movie failed to take in more than like $15 million at the box office.
Wow.
These are not good. And that was in production for over 30 years, and somebody died during the making of that film. These are not good figures. These are doomsday figures. And it's, like I said, it's getting to the point right now where the theater is going to be reserved for these big budget affairs. And even these big budget affairs, I'm telling you right now, they're not guarantees. Power Rangers, probably not getting a sequel. They planned for 6 sequels.
6 sequels?
They planned for a cinematic universe, which is my new favorite buzzword.
What? One for each Power Ranger?
One for each an origin story for each. I was looking forward to the pink Power Ranger story, but no. Power Rangers, on a $100 million budget, it's made about $83 million in America.
That's so That's so fascinating to me. That, I mean, look, people just assume you can pull a cinematic universe out of your pocket and then just go with it, right? They'll eat it up. The fans will eat it up. No, the fans they're the most critical they're the most critical demographic you could possibly have. These are the nerds and the fans, and the like. They spend their time reading wikis on fake universes. They could be reading something useful, like history, like actual world history. Instead, they spend their time on Wikipedia reading about Star Wars. And I know this because I am one of those losers.
I am too. It's Trudeau like Justin. Trudeau like Justin.
To see these grandiose that really is delusion of grandeur, right?
No, it is.
6 Power Rangers. Is that confirmed? That's got to be an exaggeration.
They were saying that they planned for 6 movies on
That's
this.
ambition, man. That's not ambition, that's delusion.
No, it is. And it gets to the point, too, where it's like, Hollywood is so starved for franchises. Like, that's why we got a movie adaptation of Chips.
Yeah.
That's why 21 Jump Street and Men in Black are having a crossover movie.
What? I didn't even know this.
That's going to be 23 Jump Street in black. But the thing is like, Hollywood is so starved for these movies. And now what you're getting now, too, is like you're almost now not getting franchises. You're, in a way, getting reimaginings like Beauty and the Beast, which, I'll be honest, like Cinderella, don't do anything different to the formula. All they do is throw about $150 million to an old formula, an old story, and make it live action.
$1 billion.
Grandiose.
$1 billion.
And that's what it's making. You know what I mean? And that's what it's going to wind up doing.
$1 billion world or U.S.?
$1 billion world. $1 billion worldwide.
Still $1 billion.
$470 million domestically. But these are the successes. Like, people always say, why do they make a third, and this is in theaters now, a third Smurfs movie? And now even the Smurfs is going to wind up being a trilogy. Well, the thing is, this new Smurfs movie is going to wind up being a flop in America. But people ask, they're like, why do studios make Smurf movies? I get this question a lot. They're like, why do they make 3 Despicable Me movies? You know what? Because those movies are almost guaranteed to make a couple $100 million in America. And in an age of piracy, too, that's another thing, too. That's another topic. I get into it for another day because that's a whole beast in itself. I don't pirate movies. I don't believe in it. The only time I'll watch movies online is if it's a rare film that is hard to obtain on DVD. Yeah. Like there's a movie called Skin Deep that's like $60 out of print DVD. I'm probably going to have to watch it online when I review it. I don't pirate movies online. I pay for all the movies that I see in theaters. I think that's my personal way of doing it. I don't get screeners for these movies. I go see them with you. I sit with the hoi polloi, as I call it.
Why would you, honestly, and too, also people are like pirating indie films. Why would you do that? Why would you pirate Moonlight? And why would you do that? Come on.
And there's an issue too, and there's an issue too with like people saying like I go see indie movies, but I don't pirate, or I pirate higher Hollywood films because they already have millions of dollars. Well, you know what? That's why movies like Phoenix Forgotten, The Promise, Born in China, Unforgettable, and Free Fire Bomb is because people say that like, oh, it's Hollywood, they're not going to lose any money. Don't forget this too. Justin Barber, the director of Phoenix Forgotten, he's probably trying to direct a Conjuring sequel. The only way he's going to be able to do that is if Phoenix Forgotten performs very well. and it's not doing it. Now, Phoenix Forgotten, out of many things, it's got the one that came out this weekend, is having other problems too. It's coming in an oversaturation of the found footage genre, which I still enjoy, but it's about uniformly dead.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's lost its luster. It's lost its thrill. It's played out.
And now later in this hour, and I hope you join me for this, I want to talk about another thing too, which is the perception of sequels. Just because people turn out for the first film doesn't mean they're coming for the second or the third one. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Hopefully you're going to join me for this, Dom. Hopefully you join me in about maybe 10 minutes or so. I want to break that down for you, too. A lot of people think, and I think Hollywood still thinks, that sequels are guaranteed bets. I got 3-4 examples right now that show sequels are anything but guaranteed money makers. That's coming up in about 10-15 minutes or so. I'm Steve Pulaski. You're in the middle of Sleepless with Steve. Coming up next, Lights Out by Breaking Benjamin on your home for Pure Rock Radio, FM 89. Blow by Communion, one of our lovely currents here at FM 89. I'm Steve Pulaski. Already well into the second hour of Sleepless with Steve. Joining me right now is the inimitable Dominic Guanzon. How you doing, Dom?
I'm doing quite all right.
Very good to have you with me tonight. Thanks for being here. Listening to me rant and rave and talk very pessimistically about the future of cinema. Like I said, we were talking about earlier in the hour, we were going into about how this has been a very disappointing, very underwhelming weekend indeed for the box office, prompting 5 films to not only significantly underperform, but 3 of which are debatably going to bomb. Now, we were also going into, like, cases of where films are trying to kickstart a franchise, like Power Rangers, that aren't doing so hot, and you were surprised at the stat down that I said that they were planning, the studio was planning 6 Power Rangers sequels.
Come on.
They wanted that. They wanted 6 sequels, not 6 movies in total. I'm talking 6 sequels, so it'd be 7.
I want a Lamborghini, doesn't mean I'm going to get it.
Yeah, no kidding. I know how it feels to want, you know. But anyway, that's exactly what Hollywood has been doing. They're incredible when it comes to overvaluing franchises or thinking that because people showed up for the first movie, that means they're going to show up for the second one. I have several cases where that hasn't happened. The first one is in theaters right now. It's Smurfs: The Lost Village.
But it's kind of a special case because it's, Smurfs, which is just a cash cow.
Well, of course. But you know what? At one time it was a very successful cash cow. It really was. Like, we laugh at the Smurfs, and I get it. We're like, how are these movies making money? You know, the first Smurfs movie made over $500 million worldwide. The first movie made about $560 million worldwide. The sequel made $347 million worldwide. So far, domestically, you know what this new one's made? $33 million. That's it. And mainly, I'd argue, because of The Boss Baby. The Boss Baby's doing great business.
Yeah, that's just competition.
Overperforming like hell. It's doing a lot of money. It's getting a lot of money in America. So Smurfs is another example where it's going to really need an overseas push to succeed. But there are other examples of this, and one of the most special is Alice Through the Looking Glass. This was the sequel that came out last year. It's about to be a year old next month. And it's a sequel to Tim Burton's film Alice in Wonderland, okay? Now, if you remember Alice in Wonderland, it came out 7 years ago. That film made over $1 billion worldwide.
Really?
Alice in Wonderland. And it was a very special case for a few reasons. Number one, it was the first big blockbuster after Avatar. After Avatar in 2009. It was the first big blockbuster to come out. And number two, it got a big push because 3D was new and hot. And Tim Burton was at the height of his popularity. Fast forward 6 years, they make a sequel. Tim Burton's not the director anymore. It's James Bobbin, who directed the Muppets sequel a couple of years ago.
On.
Alice Through the Looking Glass makes $77 million domestically against a $170 million budget. It made about $200 million worldwide. That's paltry. That's paltry compared to the original.
That proves Tim Burton's name is still worth something, right?
Well, it does. I've long defended Tim Burton. I don't think he's nearly as bad as people give him credit for. I think he's had some misfires, just in terms of just good movies. But Big Eyes is severely underrated. He's a terrific director. But Alice Through the Looking Glass is like poster child example of that. It was not only a film that people didn't want a sequel to, but it was also a movie that was Alice in Wonderland was a very shot-in-the-dark success. That kind of success will never be replicated like that. That was a product of its time that had a lot of mitigating circumstances that helped it succeed.
By 3D, you mean 3D glasses?
3D glasses, yeah, that was a big thing, too. Because you remember when 3D was hot?
When did that die out?
That died out about 2012, 2013, okay. I would say. And like I said, there's still 3D movies out nowadays, but it's nowhere near where it was.
People were scared this was going to be the new standard.
Yes. And I mean, like I said, there's a lot of good movies for 3D. That's another topic for another time, however, but that's a big reason why Alice in Wonderland, the first one, succeeded. Here's another great example, the movie Neighbors 2, Sorority Rising, a sequel that I would argue is better than the original. I think Neighbors 2 is a very good film in a lot of different respects. Mm-hmm. Now, the first Neighbors made $150 million domestically. Neighbors 2 made $55 million. That's very low. And especially for a Seth Rogen, Zac Efron headline comedy that's a sequel to a very successful comedy. That's another example, too.
I would think a comedy like that would be pretty safe.
You think so? And I bet, and I thought so, too. But there's another thing. That film, if you watch the trailer, and I did this, if you watch the trailer to the original Neighbors and the trailer to Neighbors 2, they look like the same movie.
That's true.
And that's a problem. That's a big problem when you're trying to sell audiences to get out of the house and go to the theater and watch the same movie twice.
What was the twist in Neighbors 2? Was it just that they added the female sorority now?
There was a sorority. That was the main twist.
Oh, not female. That's redundant.
No,
sorority. They added the sorority.
I wasn't going to call you out, but no, that was the main grab, was that they were competing with a sorority now instead of a fraternity. Okay. And the sorority, honestly, this movie had a lot better commentary about like males and female sorority culture. I thought it was a decently made movie, but very few people saw it. It did not make a lot of money. It made $108 million worldwide. Again, a sequel that looked the same as the original. Nobody was bothered to see it.
It sounds like the Anchorman 2 situation where and the first Anchorman really didn't. There was no message. It was just ridiculousness, right? Whereas Anchorman 2 actually had a decent message behind it.
Yes,
if you remember.
Yes,
but I don't think it did any better than the first.
Anchorman 2 was, in my opinion, overblown and 5 years too late.
I mean, honestly, I don't know how it could have lived up to expectations at that point.
I mean, it's not even about living up to expectations, but that film was overblown and it came 5 years too late. Right. It felt so dated. And you know what? You remember how hyped people were for that movie? Mm-hmm. How many people talk about it? I think this is the first time all this year anybody's brought up Anchorman 2 to me.
Everyone still makes jokes from the first one.
Yeah, of course. Because it's a very funny comedy. It's a very funny movie. But again, Will Ferrell was at a totally different height of popularity in 2004 compared to when that film came out in 2011, I think. I think it was 2011, 2012. Now, here's another case. Here's one of the most pathetic cases of a sequel, too. The Divergent series.
Boy.
The first film, Divergent, made a lot of money. Insurgent, the sequel, made a little bit less, but it made decent. Allegiant made $66 million domestic and $179 million worldwide.
It's a classic case of like Hunger Games repetition, and even Hunger Games lost its own game.
Yes.
It lost control of its own luster.
It still was making money at the end, but it fizzled out. By the time they made the sequel, people were done with it.
I don't think
the end one. The people Mockingjay, people were done.
I don't think Divergent could have ever escaped its Mockingjay shadow, or Hunger Games shadow.
I don't think it could have either. This is why I call Divergent series so pathetic, and this is what it is. And I haven't seen any of the movies. I'm talking strictly in an empirical sense. What I find hilarious about the Divergent series, and I don't root for any movies to fail, I really don't. But you know what happened now? Allegiant did so bad. I don't know what the first one is called. I'm going to go out on a whim and say it ends with an IANT ending or an ANT ending. But it did so poorly, Allegiant, at the box office, that the next film, the adaptation of the fourth book, is going to be a TV movie trying to spawn a TV series.
Ooh, man.
That ain't good, man.
That's almost like you have no honor at that point, you know what I'm saying?
No, it's true. You're very right on that one.
I know if it works, it works. Don't get me wrong, but like, I don't know. I mean, now we should also mention, maybe you're thinking, wait, these guys didn't see these movies. How come why do they have the right to say these things about Allegiant? Maybe they could be just good movies on their own.
They could be very well.
We're talking specifically about the business side of it and just from an industry standpoint. So when we're saying, we haven't seen these movies, but we're still talking about, it's kind of lukewarm. We're saying that because that's a reflection of what the mass movie-going population is also feeling. Like, think about it. You can't deny that, the Divergent series was such in the shadow of Hunger Games.
Yeah.
And as I said before, Hunger Games let itself burn out way too quickly. I mean, the fact that they let the last movie in what was supposed to should have been a trilogy, they split it. They did the Harry Potter. They split into two movies.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
The young adults film, book to film adaptation is very risky. A lot of them bomb. There's a reason you probably haven't heard of Before I Fall, Vampire Academy. These movies did horribly.
I remember hearing about Vampire Academy. I remember being so annoyed by the trailers, like, I don't want to see this.
I mean, Before I Fall was pretty good, but it didn't do much. Young adult movies are very risky bets. Now, the last sequel I'll bring up that didn't do well at all, and was my pick last year for the worst film of last year, was Zoolander #2. And I was not a fan of the first one either, but here's the other catch, too. Zoolander 2 was a movie that it came out 15 years after the first movie. Zoolander was noteworthy for one reason. It was the first movie post 9/11 that did fairly well at the box office. A lot of people don't like to talk about this because a lot of people forget, obviously, because there was bigger things happening at that time. A lot of movies after 9/11 bombed in 2001. Donnie Darko,
a weird choice of words, but yeah. I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, a lot of movies bombed after 9/11. Donnie Darko was a famous bomb after 9/11.
Well, that's a special case because that became cult status.
That became a cult status, but like I said, it was ignored in theaters. Corky Romano was ignored in theaters.
You think these movies could have done well?
I think they could have. I think Donnie Darko could have at least been a sleeper hit.
So then you're saying it took something absolutely, utterly ridiculous like Zoolander.
Zoolander, yeah, that's exactly right. I think Zoolander is mostly remembered in that sense, too. A lot of people that at least saw it in theaters it was something uplifting during a horrible tragedy.
Right.
And Zoolander 2 now comes 15 years late. They kept messing around in terms of the production. Ben Stiller could not commit at all to the production and whatnot. It comes out 15 years later, makes $28 million at the box office, has no cultural impact whatsoever.
It's Anchorman 2.
No, it's worse than Anchorman 2. At least Anchorman 2 made money. At least Anchorman 2 was decent in some respect, and at least Anchorman 2 kept its audience and went off of hype. Nobody wanted to see a second Zoolander, and the people that did originally got tired of it being in production and out of production. Like, what's a movie I'll tell you right now, too?
Yeah.
And then we got to get back to the music. What's a movie that is not going to do well if it ever gets made, and I hope it doesn't get made, is Ghostbusters 3.
Man,
they keep teasing that movie, and they keep talking about it.
So you're talking about Ghostbusters 3 from the original?
The sequel to the second film,
How can you even do that at that point?
With
the time
Ramis,
has passed. Ramis is gone.
Ramis is dead, and
that's spitting on the grave of Ramis.
I think they're still going forward with it. I mean, for years they couldn't get Bill Murray to commit to it. Then they got Rick Moranis, who hasn't acted in years. They couldn't get Bill Murray. Bill Murray was on one day, off the next, and it just got to the point of being ridiculous, okay? And I'm telling you right now, if Ghostbusters 3 comes out, there's going to be a lot of fans that don't want to see it.
There are a lot of fans who hated the reboot.
Yeah, which like
understandably so. I'm one of those people. It's like, why do you need to reboot this? Never mind the feminism thing. I'm not even harping on that. That's what.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a little bit.
Yeah, we did. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about the fact that you rebooted something that is so beloved.
Yeah.
And you did nothing new with it. Here's the thing. Again, we might have talked about this before, but I'll say it again.
Go ahead.
The special thing about Ghostbusters is that they could have had it so that this new generation of Ghostbusters, the women from SNL, right? They could have done it so that it was the same universe as the first two Ghostbusters. It just takes place in Chicago now, or Los Angeles, or whatever.
Yes.
Right? And then this is just another branch of the Ghostbusters. Why does Ghostbusters need to be in New York? Granted, New York is kind of a character in itself in the Ghostbusters series, but the formula of just ghosts in the real world and here's a funny group of people trying to capture them, that can apply to anything.
It really could.
Why did you have to restart the whole formula over again?
And the thing is, too, that's a very weird. Like I said, we're kind of deviating off topic here, but that's a very weird film in terms of continuity.
Yeah.
It almost feels like the original series didn't exist, but at times they're acknowledging that it did. And it's just I didn't hate the movie. I thought it actually had a lot more, it was a lot more fun and had a lot more to offer than a lot of people give it credit for. I don't think it's a perfect movie. I think it's a fun movie. But at the same time, you're kind of scratching your head thinking to yourself, it's very muddled the way that they conducted it. You don't know, I didn't know if the original, and again, it doesn't really matter, but at the same time, I'm sitting there thinking, did the first two Ghostbusters movies happen in this movie, or is this just like some totally off-branch thing? And it doesn't help that the thing is called Ghostbusters, so it's just called Ghostbusters.
I hate that. No, I will say, just trying to get back on topic, I talk with my dad about this a lot, just in terms of just movies. It's like, what I would ask, why does this need to get made? And my dad will say, well, look, it's he does not talk like this, but look, it's a business, this is an economy, this is how it works. People need to get made, movies need to get made, and I understand that point completely. Sure.
Of course.
Yeah, it is an industry. At the end of the day, it does come down to money, right? I cannot deny that, as much as idealistic we want to be about movies.
No, it's very true.
There has to be economics behind it. But if I'm sitting in a movie and I'm looking at it and go, man, why was this made? Oh, money. If the first thing that comes to my head is money, this movie has failed. Right.
Yeah.
This movie has failed as a quality product.
Yes. And if you're thinking, and like, I mean, you look at something amazing like a movie that came out last year like Moonlight or Manchester by the Sea. You could tell that the people behind that were not thinking money.
No.
You know what I mean? And the people behind that were looking to make art. Were looking to make something that people could feel. And the moment you start looking at like I would like to juxtapose the behind the scenes conversations had about making Moonlight compared to making something like Power Rangers. Like they would probably be something like Barry Jenkins from Moonlight saying, I want Mahershala Ali to be in this scene. I like his presence here. I think he's got a good element in this particular scene. Whereas Power Rangers, it probably would be
Bryan Cranston. Oh man, he'd bring in buzz.
Well, the thing is, they're probably thinking they're probably talking on Power Rangers. Put that actor in. He's good looking. Then you're not in the business. You're not in the business of making you're not in the business of making quality movies. You're in the business of manufacturing images, and that's sort of
people will see through that. People will see through that.
Indeed.
I mean, don't get me wrong. When I drove home from La La Land in the theater, I was thinking, man, this movie's gonna make a lot of money. People will eat this up. Hipsters will eat this up. But when I was watching it, I was like, no, I wasn't thinking about that.
Of course not.
This is awesome. This is a beautiful tribute. Like what you said about what was the line again that you had? Like it's not about movies anymore. It's about images.
I was gonna say if you're looking at that, if you're looking at that alone, you know what I mean. If you're looking at like who's the better looking actor, you're in the business of manufacturing images.
Yes, I like that.
That's exactly how I feel. Don't Look Back in Anger by Oasis is next on your home for Pure Rock Radio, WONC FM 89.